I want to tell you about a woman named Dorothy. Dorothy was not rich. She never had a fancy title. She never got a promotion that changed her life. She worked as a seamstress in a small town in Ohio for 43 years. Her best year, she made $22,000. Most years, she made less. She clipped coupons. She ate leftovers. She drove a 1987 Toyota Corolla until the doors stopped closing properly. And when Dorothy died in 2019, her daughter, Claire, a nurse who had been struggling to keep $100 in her savings account, opened her mother's closet and found 7 old, brittle notebooks inside a plastic bag. Inside those notebooks was a record. Every single purchase Dorothy had ever made, every dollar saved, every small deposit, going back to 1976. And at the bottom of the last notebook was a handwritten number. $184,000. Dorothy, the woman who made $22,000 a year, had quietly, patiently, invisibly built a fortune. And here is the question that hit Claire like a freight train. If her mother could do it on a seamstress salary, why couldn't she? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what Dorothy knew that almost nobody else does. And you are going to know how to start, even if your bank account says 0 today. This is the 1% wealth rule, and it is going to change everything you thought you knew about saving money. Now let's talk about the real problem first, because most people think the problem is income. They think, if I just made more money, I'd finally be able to save. That is the lie. And it is a beautiful, convincing, dangerous lie. Studies consistently show that when people get a raise, their spending increases by almost the same amount within 6 months. You earn more. You spend more. The gap between income and savings stays exactly the same. It has a name. Economists call it lifestyle creep. And it is one of the sneakiest wealth destroyers in modern America. In 2024, the Federal Reserve released a report that should stop every American cold. 57% of Americans could not cover a $1,000 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. That is not a group of people who are all underpaid. That is a group of people who were never taught one simple rule. So let me ask you something. If someone handed you $500 right now, what would your first instinct be? Most people would pay off something, or spend it on something they've been waiting for, or tell themselves they'll save it, and then spend it within 30 days. That instinct is the problem, and here is where it comes from. We have been trained, since childhood, to think of savings as what is left over after everything else. You pay rent. You pay the electric bill. You buy groceries. You pay for Netflix, Hulu, the gym membership you haven't used since January 3rd. You fill up the gas tank. You grab coffee on the way to work. And then, if something is left over at the end of the month, maybe you save it. That model is broken. It has always been broken. Warren Buffett, the man who turned $6,000 into $140 billion, said this decades ago. And it is still the most underrated financial quote in history. Do not save what is left after spending. Spend what is left after saving. Read that again. That is not a motivational poster. That is not something you put on your vision board and forget. That is a complete, total architectural redesign of how money moves through your life. Dorothy knew this. She saved first, always, even if it was $5, even if it was $3, even in the months when money was painfully tight. She saved first, and then she lived on the rest. But there is something even deeper happening here. Something that goes beyond habit, something psychological. Most people who struggle with savings do not have a money problem. They have an identity problem. Think about this carefully. If someone asks you right now, are you good with money? What do you say? If your answer is anywhere close to not really, or I'm working on it, or it's complicated, you have already lost, because you have identified yourself as someone who is not a saver. And human behavior follows identity like a shadow follows a body. You do not rise to the level of your financial goals. You fall to the level of your financial identity. This is what behavioral psychologists call identity-based behavior. When we believe something is just who we are, we stop questioning it. We stop fighting it. We just live inside it, like a room with no windows. Claire used to say, I'm terrible with money, like it was a fact of nature, like it was her eye color, something she was born with, something unchangeable. But Dorothy never said that. Not once. Not in 43 years. Dorothy called herself careful. She called herself patient. Small, quiet words. But those small words built a $184,000 estate on a seamstress salary. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. Right now in your head, or out loud if you're alone, replace the phrase, "I'm bad with money" with this. I am learning to build wealth 1% at a time. That's it. That's the first step of the 1% wealth rule. And it matters more than any investment account you will ever open. Because an account without the right identity is just an empty jar. It will never stay full. Now let's talk about the math, because this is where it gets extraordinary. I want you to picture something. You are on a boat, and the boat is slowly taking on water. Not fast, not a catastrophic flood, just a slow, steady leak. You are panicking. You are bailing water out with a teacup, one scoop at a time, and it feels pointless. It feels like nothing you are doing will stop this. Most people at that point do the worst possible thing. They put down the teacup, they sit down, cross their arms, and watch the water rise. Because what is the point of a teacup against a flood? But here is what they miss. The teacup is working. Bailing with a teacup is infinitely better than watching it flood, because every teacup matters, every scoop compounds. And the person who keeps bailing, one small scoop at a time, is the person who stays afloat long enough for the rescue ship to arrive. That teacup is your 1%. Here is how it works in exact numbers. Let's say you take home $3,200 a month after taxes. That is very close to the U.S. median take-home pay right now. 1% of $3,200 is $32 a month, not $320, not $3,200, $32. That is one dinner out you skip. That is canceling one streaming service you forgot you had. That is making coffee at home 3 mornings a week instead of stopping at the drive-thru. That is it. Now what happens when you invest that $32 every single month into an S&P 500 index fund? The S&P 500 has averaged 10.5% annual returns over the past 50 years. Not every year. Some years it loses 30%. Some years it gains 30%. But averaged across decades, 10.5%. At $32 a month, here is what the math looks like. After 10 years, approximately $6,500. After 20 years, approximately $25,000. After 30 years, approximately $80,000. After 40 years, approximately $220,000, from $32 a month. But Dorothy did not stop at 1%. She started there. After 6 months of saving 1%, she moved to 2%. She couldn't feel the difference. It was too small. After another 6 months, she moved to 3%, then 5%. She did this slowly, over years, the way a plant grows. You cannot see it happening on any single day. But look away for a season, and suddenly the whole tree is there. By 1990, 14 years after she started, Dorothy was saving and investing 15% of her income. Not because she was earning more, because she had built the habit so gradually, so invisibly, that it had become automatic. It was no longer an effort. It was just who she was. And at 15% of $22,000 a year, that is $3,300 annually, invested consistently in the market for 40 years at 10% average annual return, the math becomes breathtaking. $3,300 per year for 40 years at 10% is $1.6 million. Dorothy didn't reach that number. She had $184,000 when she died because she started late, because she lost years to fear before she found her system. But $184,000 on a seamstress salary in a town nobody's heard of, with no inheritance, no side hustle, no lucky stock pick, that is extraordinary. Now here is the urgent part, the part I need you to hear. Warren Buffett has said more than once that the biggest mistake most investors make is not picking the wrong stock. It is not buying at the wrong time. It is not trusting the wrong advisor. It is starting too late. Time is the only weapon in compound interest's arsenal that cannot be manufactured. You cannot buy more of it. You cannot borrow it. Every day you wait, you are handing it back to the universe, unused. The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Not tomorrow, not after your next paycheck, not after you get organized. Today, now let me walk you through the 3 accounts that can turn your 1% into a fortune. Dorothy saved in a regular passbook savings account her entire life. She got maybe 2 to 3% interest in her best years. Not ideal, but she still built $184,000 because the habit was right. You have tools available to you right now that Dorothy never had. Tools that can take her result and multiply it. The first account is the Roth IRA. This is the most powerful savings vehicle available to most Americans. Here is why it is extraordinary. You contribute money you have already paid taxes on. It grows inside the account completely tax-free. And when you retire, you withdraw every single dollar, including all the gains, completely tax-free. In 2025, you can contribute up to $7,000 a year if you are under 50. That is $583 a month. If you invested $583 a month in a Roth IRA starting at age 25 at 10% average annual returns, by age 65, you would have approximately $3.7 million. Tax-free. That is not speculation. That is a calculator. That is just math. The second account is the 401k, especially with employer match. If your employer offers a 401k match and you're not capturing the full match, stop what you are doing and fix this today. A typical employer match is 50 cents for every dollar you contribute up to 6% of your salary. That is a guaranteed 50% return on your money before the market does a single thing. If you earn $50,000 and your employer matches up to 6%, that is $1,500 of free money every year, just for participating. Start here first. Always. Capture the full match before anything else. The third account is the high yield savings account, your emergency buffer. Before you invest aggressively, you need a buffer. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses sitting in a high yield savings account earning 4 to 5% interest. Not invested in the market, not locked up. Liquid. Accessible. This is your teacup holder, because here is the painful truth. Without an emergency fund, the first time life gets hard, a car repair, a medical bill, a slow month at work, you will pull from your investments. You will sell assets at the worst possible moment. And every time you do, you restart the compounding clock. Dorothy's notebook showed something important. Through 43 years of saving, she maintained a small emergency fund. Always. She treated it like a non-negotiable bill. She rebuilt it before she increased any investment contribution. That boring, patient, unsexy discipline is what separated her from everyone else in her town making the same salary. Warren Buffett started investing at age 11. He bought 3 shares of Citi's Service Preferred at $38 per share. The stock dropped to $27. He held it. It climbed back to $40. He sold. Then the stock went to $202. He has told that story for decades, not as a regret, as a lesson. Because that one experience, that painful, expensive lesson, taught him the single most important truth in wealth building. The enemy of wealth is impatience, not the market, not inflation, not recessions, not bad luck. Impatience. Charlie Munger, Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway and one of the greatest financial minds in human history, put it in even simpler terms. The big money is not in the buying and the selling, but in the waiting. Most people cannot wait because waiting feels passive. It feels like nothing. It feels like you are not doing enough, not being smart enough, not hustling enough. But here is the quiet truth that Dorothy understood, and that Wall Street does not want you to know. Doing nothing and while your money compounds is an active strategy. It requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires an identity that says, I am a long-term builder, not a short-term player. Charlie Munger used to talk about what he called the psychology of human misjudgment, the catalog of mental errors that destroy wealth one bad decision at a time. One of the most destructive he identified is called loss aversion. The science is clear. The pain of losing $100 feels psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $100. This is why people panic sell when markets drop. They cannot stand watching their account go red. So they sell. They lock in the loss. They move to cash. And they miss the recovery completely. Between February and March 2020, the S&P 500 dropped 34% in 33 days. Millions of Americans panic sold. By August 2020, just 5 months later, the market had fully recovered. The people who sold lost. The people who waited, who did nothing, won. Dorothy never panic sold because she never watched the market like a scoreboard. She treated her savings not as numbers on a screen, but as seeds in the ground. You do not dig up a seed every day to check if it's growing. You water it. You leave it alone. You trust the process. And season after season, year after year, the tree grows. That patient, invisible trust is the compound wisdom. Let's go back to Claire. After she found Dorothy's 7 notebooks, she didn't immediately open a Roth IRA. She didn't immediately start a budget. She didn't download a finance app. First, she cried. She cried because she was 42 years old with $4.12 in her savings account, and her mother, who earned less than her, had quietly built a $184,000 fortune. She felt the weight of every year she had wasted, every raise she had spent. Every month she had told herself, I'll start next month. Then she got angry. And then she did something I want you to notice very carefully. She went to a drugstore and bought a blank notebook. And on the very first page, in blue pen, she wrote one sentence. I am someone who saves first. Not I will try to save. Not I want to be better with money. Not starting Monday. I am someone who saves first. Present tense. Identity, not aspiration. She opened a Roth IRA that same afternoon. She transferred $32, exactly 1% of her monthly take-home pay, into a target date index fund. Just $32. 6 months later, she moved to 2%, then 3%. She never looked back. 4 years later, Claire has over $23,000 saved and invested. She drives the same car. She lives in the same apartment. Her salary has grown slightly, but nothing dramatic. The only thing that changed was her identity. And I need you to understand something. That identity shift is available to you right now, in this moment. You do not need a higher salary. You do not need the market to cooperate. You do not need a perfect budget or a financial advisor. You need one sentence. Write it down right now. On your phone, in a notebook, on a sticky note, on your mirror. I am someone who saves first. Read it tomorrow morning, and the morning after that. Because the person who reads that sentence every morning becomes, over time, the person that sentence describes. That is how identity works. That is how Dorothy built $184,000 on $22,000 a year. That is how you build yours. Let's make this real. Let's make this practical. Here is your 30-day 1% action plan. No complexity, no confusion, no excuses. Days 1 through 3. Calculate your 1%. Take your monthly after-tax income. Multiply it by 0.01. Write that number down. That is your teacup amount. That is where you start. Days 4 through 7. Open your accounts. If your employer offers a 401k with a match, start there. Contribute just enough to capture the full match. Then open a Roth IRA. Fidelity, Vanguard, and Charles Schwab all offer free accounts with zero minimum to open. Pick one. Do it this week. Days 8 through 14. Automate everything. Set your savings transfer to happen automatically the day your paycheck arrives, before you see it, before you can spend it, before your brain can negotiate with you, out of sight, out of mind, into your future. Automation is not laziness. Automation is strategy. It removes willpower from the equation, and willpower is the one resource that always runs out. Days 15 through 21. Find your leak. Go through last month's bank statement. Find one recurring expense, just one, that you can reduce or eliminate. Not forever, just for now. Subscription services you forgot you had. Eating out 4 nights a week instead of 2. Impulse purchases under $20 that add up to $200 without you noticing. That saved amount becomes your 1% contribution. Days 22 through 30. Write your identity statement, like Claire did. Like Dorothy would have. Get a blank page, paper or digital, and write. I am someone who saves first. Read it every single morning, not as a reminder, as a declaration of who you are, because you are. Starting today, I want to leave you with one final thought. Dorothy never told anyone she was building wealth. She didn't post about it on Facebook. She didn't talk about her savings at family dinners. She didn't show anyone her notebooks. She didn't brag about her interest rates or her index fund balance. She just did the work, quietly, patiently, every single month, for 43 years. When Claire found those notebooks, she called them the most expensive gift she ever received, not because of the $184,000, but because of what was written on the very first page of the very first notebook from 1976. When Dorothy was 31 years old and just getting started, she had written 4 words. Small drops fill buckets. That is it. That is the whole lesson. 4 words. 43 years. $184,000. Your $32 is a drop. Your $50 is a drop. Your 1%, whatever it is a drop. But compound interest does not care how small the drop is. It only cares how long the bucket has been filling. Start today. Not tomorrow. Not Monday. Not after the next paycheck. Today, before you go, I want to hear from you right now. Scroll to the comments and answer this one question. What is the one tiny expense you are going to cut this week to start your 1%? I am going to personally reply to the first 50 comments because your wealth journey matters, and I want to be part of it from day one. If this video gave you something real, subscribe and ring that bell. Because next week we are going inside the exact portfolio strategy Warren Buffett recommended for everyday Americans, and it will change how you think about investing forever. The teacup is in your hand. Start bailing.